Today we're going to take a look at our TI-84 calculator and how we can input some expressions. We're going to use the math button. We're going to use all these buttons here to put in expressions and go through those and evaluate those and everything like that. So we're going to start by taking a look at the variable button. It's this button right here. And as you can see, if we press that, it just puts an X on the screen for us. All right, and that's what we'll be using. Now, that's not going to be very useful for us in this course on this screen, which is the home screen. But if I press Y equals, that is the screen where we'll usually be using that variable, that X, T, theta, N button. And so if we go into this screen and we press that X button, that's what we're going to use for a lot of functions. So we can put in the function y equals x plus 6. And if we were to graph that, that would graph a line for us. And so that's usually where we'll be using that button. You don't have to press the alpha and then the x. You just have to go straight to that button that's right there beside alpha and hit that, and that is going to do our variable of x for us. Now, to get out of any screen, we're just going to press second and then quit. And that'll take us back to the home screen. So anytime we're in there's a y equals screen or any other screen, we just press second and then quit, and that's going to take us back to the home screen. Now, when you press that second button, over all of these buttons, you can see that there is blue writing over top of them. And so by pressing second, it's gonna give us the second function for any of those buttons. And so when you press second, whatever's written in blue over top of those buttons, that's actually what you're going to do with that button. All right, and I can clear off the screen just by hitting the clear button, and that's going to clear everything off. We had the X up there, we hit the clear button, and that cleared it off for us. All right, so let's take a look here at the squared button, or the square button. And we can press that just to square a number. So here we're going to do 5 squared. See, whenever we press that, it just puts the 2 up there for us. Now you see an X on the button, but that X is basically, that's what your number is going to be. So you type in your number and then hit that button, and it'll put the exponent of 2 or squared up there for you. And we hit enter to evaluate that, and 5 squared is 25. So there we are. All right. And so if we take a look at that, now if we want to do the opposite of squaring, which is taking the square root of something, we're going to go up and we're going to hit the second button and then come down here and hit that same button, because we can see that the square root is in blue over top of that button. So we hit second and then squared, and it gives us the square root, and we can put in 25 and hit enter. And there we have the square root of 25 is 5. So you can see that's just the inverse operation of squaring. Square root is the inverse operation of squaring. Just like division is the inverse operation of multiplication, and addition is the inverse operation of subtraction. Squaring and square root, those are inverse operations. All right. I can also use the squared whenever I'm inputting a function into y equals. So I can use the square root and x plus 2, and then I'll press the right arrow key. We see that the x plus 2 is underneath the radical. I can press the right arrow key, and I'm out from underneath the radical now, and then minus 1. And we have to pay attention whenever we're looking at these functions to what's underneath the radical and what's outside of the radical. Whenever we talk about parent functions, it's going to be very important for us to keep straight when we talk about transformations. So you want to look at what's underneath the radical and what's outside of the radical there. All right, so we're going to do second and quit again to go back to our home screen and clear off everything we have so far. And at this point, go ahead and pause the video, and let's go ahead and try a few of the problems that are listed there, numbers 1 through 4. Go ahead and do those now. So what if I want to raise something to more than just squared? If I want to raise something to, let's say, maybe the 5th power. I'm just going to type in my 5, and then I'm going to hit the caret button, and it's going to put it up to where I can put that exponent in. So I'm going to do 5 to the 5th here. And 5 to the 5th is 3,125. Now, if you don't remember from your 7th or 8th grade math class when this got introduced, when we raise something to an exponent, we're basically multiplying that number by itself that many times. So because I'm raising 5 to the 5th, I'm going to do 5 times itself 5 times. So 5 times 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. So I've raised it to the 5th power. I multiplied by itself 5 times. And there we go. I get the same thing, 3,125. And so if I want to raise something to higher than just squared, then I'm going to use that caret button to make an exponent for myself and then evaluate that. Go ahead and pause the video now and do numbers 5 through 8. And so now we've done almost everything we're going to do with the buttons on the front. So now let's go into this math menu here. And you can see across the top you have some tabs. You have math, then you have number just to the right of that. There's a few things there that we're going to look at. To the right of that we have the complex menu. We're not going to do much with that until later on in the course. And then probability. Probably at the end when we get into statistics and probability, we'll do some things with that. But mainly, we're going to be looking at the math and number menus. And so let's start out with the math menu here. And this top one here, this frac, what that's going to do is it's going to take any answer that you get that's a decimal and it will turn it into a fraction. Okay, sometimes you're asked to give an exact answer or an answer as a fraction, and you'll do all of your computations and everything, and you end up with a decimal, and that decimal needs to be a fraction. So I'm just going to type in 3/9 here and evaluate that, and I get 0.3 repeating. And so what I can do is I can just hit that math button, and it's number 1, so I'm just going to hit enter. Now that ants means that I'm going to take my answer and I'm going to make it into a fraction. So I'm going to take that 0.3 repeating and make it into a fraction. I hit enter again and it's 1/3. And you probably knew that that was going to simplify to 1/3, but you can do this with pretty much anything that you get that is a decimal. You're going to be able to turn it into a fraction by hitting that, as long as it's going to be a rational number. If it's irrational, that's not going to work, but any irrational answer you're going to be able to turn into a fraction like that. So that's the first thing under math. Right? The next thing is if we want to do a cube root. So if I want to do cube root, I'm going to hit math and go down to the cube root. So I can take the cube root really of any number. We're just going to do the cube root of 64 because that's going to be 4. So I do the cube root, and that's 64. Absolute value. No, maybe not. Just kidding. We're going to look at how to put things in as a fraction. All right, so we're going to go down to letter D, which is numerator and denominator. And lots of people ask, how can I put this in as a fraction? This is how you do it. You're going to hit math, go over to number, and we're going to go to this. I'm putting in the fraction here of 4/5. And there it is. Right? So I've got my numerator of 4, my denominator of 5. And let's go ahead and do some addition. I'm going to add, I think, 2/3. 2/3 would be a good option here. Right, over to number. Press up a couple times, or just once actually. That will take me straight to numerator and denominator, and 2 on the top, and 3 on the bottom. And there we go. 4/5 plus 2/3 gives me 22/15. All right, so the calculator did everything for me. It found a least common denominator for me. It changed to equivalent fractions, and it just went ahead and added those fractions for me. So 4/5 plus 2/3, and I got 22/15. Go ahead and pause the video now and do numbers 14 through 17. All right, welcome back. Now we're under the math menu again here. This time, we're going to go down to log base. When we do logarithms later on this year, you'll see this a lot. We're going to do log base 3 of 81. Basically what we're asking ourselves here, what we're asking the calculator to tell us is 3 raised to what power is going to be 81. Right? 3 raised to what power is 81? That's basically what a logarithm is doing. That base number raised to what power is going to be the big number. So 3 to the 4th, we have log base 3 of 81. That gives us 4. So 3 to the 4th is 81. And let's look at that one more time. I have a log base 5, let's say 125. I evaluate that, it's 3. So 5 to the 3rd is 125. Log base 5 of 125 is 3. Go ahead and pause the video now and do the next set of questions. All right, welcome back. Still under the math menu here. And we're going to go over to the Numbers tab, and we're going to do absolute value. So we're going to start with the absolute value of -3 here on the home screen. Absolute value of -3 is 3. And we're going to do the absolute value of 3, which is also 3. The absolute value of a number is its distance away from 0. Right? That's all absolute value means. So -3 is 3 places away from 0. And 3 is also 3 places away from 0. Now we can also use this inside our y equals screen here to put an absolute value function onto a graph. And so we're going to be in the y equals screen, then we're going to hit that math button, go over to number, and hit enter for absolute value. So we'll do the absolute value of 2x minus 1, and then minus 2. My window's a little off here. Let me fix that real quick. I'm going to hit zoom and then 6 for a standard window. There you can see it. That is the graph of an absolute value function. Right, so go ahead and evaluate some absolute values and do that next problem set there for the absolute values. The last thing I want to talk to you about is parentheses. We're going to use parentheses to make sure that the order of operations goes right in our calculators. You can see here that I've done -3 squared. Well, -3 squared should be 9, but what the calculator is thinking right now is that I want the opposite of 3 squared. I want the negative of 3 squared, not -3 squared. And so it's taking 3 and squaring it, and then giving me the negative of that, which is -9. Well, I want to tell the calculator that, no, that's not what I want. Right? I want to actually square -3. So I'm going to use parentheses here. I'm going to open parentheses, then -3 and close parentheses. And I'm going to square that. And there we go. That's 9. This is where a lot of mistakes get made. students will just type in -3 and square that, and they'll get a negative number, and then they'll make a mistake in their computations because they'll put down a negative number when it should be positive. So make sure whenever you're squaring in the calculator, if you're squaring a negative number, that you put that negative number within parentheses. Now, another way sometimes that the order of operations gets messed up is, let's say we're doing something like 5 minus 3, and then we want all of that divided by 4. So we type in our 5 minus 3, and then we hit our divided by, our division sign there, divided by 4. And then we evaluate that, and we get 4.25. Well, that's not right. We have it 5 minus 3, and we want to divide all of that by 4. What we need to do is we need to go back, we need to put 5 minus 3 within parentheses because it's doing the order of operations here. It's doing the division first, and then the subtraction. So it's doing 3 divided by 4, which is 0.75, and then it's doing 5 minus 0.75. So I'm going to go back and put in my parentheses here. So we're going to do 5 minus 3, close parentheses, then divided by 4. Then we get 1/2, or 0.5. 5 minus 3 is 2, and 2 divided by 4 is 1/2, or 0.5. All right, go ahead and pause the video now and do the last set of problems.